never thought I'd live long enough to see betrayal standing in my own bloodline. That was the thought that froze inside my chest the day I saw them, my husband and my daughter-in-law, hiding behind the glow of my son's television. But before that moment, I had no reason to suspect that my home, my family, could rot from the inside out. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, I believed I understood loyalty. I'd built my world around it, the kind that comes from 40 years of marriage, from raising a good son, from keeping the Sunday dinners warm no matter how cold the week had been. But loyalty, I've learned, can be a mask that smiles back at you right before it slips. That morning was like any other. The November air was sharp, and the frost on my kitchen window looked like lace patterns God himself had painted. My husband, Leon, was already up, pouring his black coffee, no sugar, no cream, same as he had for years. He was humming some old Ray Charles tune, his voice deep and cracked but still charming. I used to love that sound. I was folding laundry by the counter, the scent of detergent mixing with the smell of toast. He smiled at me over the rim of his mug. "You seeing Lily today?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "She's been asking for me. Apparently I make better pancakes than her daddy." He chuckled. "You probably do. That boy still burns water," I laughed softly. But something in his tone that morning, light, distracted, almost too casual, brushed past me like a chill draft. He grabbed his jacket and keys, said he had errands to run. I didn't question it. After all, Leon had always been a man of habit. Church on Sundays, fishing on Fridays, grocery trips midweek. I never had reason to doubt him, until that day. My son Marcus lived just 15 minutes away. He'd married Jasmine 2 years ago, a young woman with soft brown eyes, a voice that could melt tension out of a room, and hands that always smelled faintly of vanilla lotion. I adored her. She treated me like her own mother, always saving me a seat at the table, always saying, "Mama Evelyn, don't you lift a finger." She was everything I'd prayed my son would find. A good wife. A good mother, gentle yet firm, their daughter. Little Lily was my joy, 6 years old and bright as the morning sun. I tried to visit every week, bringing her cookies or her favorite coloring books. It was the kind of ritual that made me feel whole again after retirement had emptied my days. That afternoon, I packed up a small basket of banana bread, tied it with a yellow ribbon, and drove over to Marcus's house. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of suburban calm where you can hear wind chimes and the soft rumble of passing cars. When I parked, I noticed Marcus's car wasn't there. I figured he was still at work. Jasmine usually worked from home, so I thought I'd surprise them both. But as I stepped up to the porch, I heard faint laughter from inside. A low, familiar voice, one that didn't belong to my son. For a moment, I froze. I thought maybe Marcus had come home early, but then I heard it again. That deep, husky chuckle, Leon, my husband, and Jasmine's softer giggle followed. Almost playful, almost intimate. Something inside me shifted. A small, cold click in my heart, like the sound of glass cracking before it shatters. I placed my hand on the doorknob and turned it slowly. It wasn't locked. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and candles, that cozy warmth Jasmine loved to fill her home with. But underneath it, I caught something else, a faint trace of Leon's cologne, the woody, peppery kind I'd gifted him last Christmas. The hallway was dim. The living room door stood half open, and the TV was on low, flickering light across the wall. That's when I saw them, not fully at first, just movement. A hand brushing against hair, the sound of someone whispering too close. I stepped closer. My palms went slick with sweat. My body didn't want to move, but my heart dragged me forward. When I reached the doorframe, I could see it clear as day. Leon's hand on Jasmine's waist. Her face tilted up, and then the kiss, slow, familiar, secret. For a second, I thought my knees might give out. My chest tightened, the kind of pain that isn't loud but deep, hollow, echoing. They didn't see me. I just stood there, my hand on the wall, my mouth open, but no sound coming out. The room felt suddenly too still. Even the TV seemed to quiet. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, and in that frozen second, something inside me decided, I would not scream. I would not cry. I would not let them see me break, because in a few days, when they least expected it, I would break them both. I turned quietly and stepped back out the door. The November air hit me hard, cold and sharp against the tears that finally came. I walked to my car without looking back, my hands trembling as I gripped the steering wheel. I drove home in silence, the sound of my husband's laugh still echoing in my head. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat there for nearly 10 minutes, staring at the house we'd built together, the porch Leon painted last summer, the flowers I planted that he always forgot to water. Everything around me looked exactly the same, but inside, I knew my life would never be again. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Every sound felt louder than it used to. Every minute stretched thin. When Leon came home, I pretended to be asleep. I could smell Jasmine's perfume on his shirt, sweet, vanilla, and for the first time in 40 years I realized I'd been living beside a stranger. I woke up the next morning before dawn, my eyes dry and heavy from a night without sleep. Leon's side of the bed was empty, already cold. I could hear the faint creak of the floorboards downstairs, the familiar rhythm of his footsteps, steady, unhurried, guiltless. He was humming again. The same song. You'd think after 40 years with a man, you'd be able to read every sound in his voice. But that morning, it felt like a stranger was living in my house, humming a tune that didn't belong to him anymore. I sat up slowly, the room still cloaked in early light. On his dresser lay the watch I'd given him for our anniversary. Next to it, a lipstick stain on a napkin. It wasn't mine. I hadn't worn lipstick in weeks. Cherry red, Jasmine's color. I remember just staring at it for a long moment, my mind trying to make excuses my heart already refused to believe. Maybe it rubbed off somewhere else. Maybe nothing. When Leon came back upstairs, he smiled like nothing in the world had changed. "Morning, Evie," he said softly, kissing the top of my head. "You were out cold last night." I forced a smile, trying not to pull away. "Yeah, must have been." He smelled like her again. That faint vanilla that clung to him like a ghost. I went about my day quietly, made breakfast, folded laundry. But everything I did felt distant, mechanical. My hands worked, but my thoughts were miles away, replaying what I saw behind that half-open door. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to throw the truth in his face. But another part of me, the quieter, older part, whispered that patience would hurt him more, because patience gives you time to make sure the knife twists clean. Later that week, Marcus called. "Hey, Ma," he said, cheerful as ever. "You coming over for Sunday dinner?" I hesitated. "Who's cooking, you or Jasmine?" He laughed. "Jasmine, of course. You know I burn toast." I forced a chuckle. "Yeah, I know." When I hung up, I stared at the phone for a long while. I thought about Jasmine, how she hugged me every visit, how she always said, "You're like the mother I never had." Those words used to warm me. Now they felt like poison. That Sunday, I went to dinner as usual. I wore a soft blue dress Leon had always liked and pinned my hair neatly. I wanted to look normal, ordinary, the kind of woman whose world hadn't just collapsed in silence. Marcus greeted me with a big smile, Lily ran into my arms squealing, and Jasmine stood in the kitchen, apron tied, stirring a pot of stew. Leon was already there, sitting at the table, laughing. When he saw me, his face changed for half a second. A flicker of something, guilt, surprise, but it was gone too quickly to be sure. "Hey, baby," he said smoothly. "Didn't think you were coming with me." "With me." The words hit harder than I expected. I looked at Jasmine. She smiled sweetly, too sweetly. "Oh, Leon said he was helping me fix the door earlier this week. It was jammed. Such a gentleman." I smiled back. He's always been that way. My voice was steady, calm, the kind that hides a storm behind every syllable. Dinner went on as usual. Lily told me about school, Marcus complained about work, and Jasmine laughed too loud at Leon's old stories. Every time her hand brushed his, my stomach tightened. But no one noticed. No one ever notices the woman who stays quiet. When dessert came, I excused myself to the kitchen. I stood by the sink, rinsing dishes that didn't need rinsing, just to catch my breath. My hands were shaking, then I heard them. Faint voices from the hallway. I leaned closer, pretending to wipe the counter. Jasmine's whisper first. "You shouldn't have come so early. She might suspect something." Leon's voice, low. "Relax, baby. She doesn't know a thing." My grip on the towel tightened so hard I thought it might tear. "She's smart," Jasmine said. "Smarter than Marcus. I think she senses something." Leon laughed. "Evelyn, she couldn't sense a storm if it hit the roof." That was the moment the love I had left for that man died completely. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just took a deep breath, turned off the faucet, and went back to the table, smiling. When I got home that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch in the dark. The night air was cool, the sky bruised purple with clouds. I thought about my son, my granddaughter, and the secret sitting at their dinner table like a viper dressed in charm. Leon came out after a while, settling beside me. "You were quiet tonight," he said. "I'm tired," I replied. He nodded, looking out into the dark yard. "We've both been tired, huh?" I studied his profile, the same face I'd loved for decades, now a stranger's reflection. Maybe so. He reached for my hand, and I let him. I wanted to remember how his fingers felt, before I would never want to touch them again. "Things will get better, Evie," he murmured, as if he believed it. I only whispered, "Oh, Leon, you have no idea how right you are." The next morning, I called my friend Carla, a retired paralegal who'd known me since college. I told her I needed help reviewing some old documents. She knew better than to pry. By the afternoon, I had something stronger than anger, a plan. I wasn't going to destroy them with shouting. No, that would be too easy, too merciful. I was going to let them ruin themselves, in their own home, with their own choices. And I'd make sure Marcus saw every truth they'd tried to bury. For the next few days, I played the part of the dutiful wife. I smiled when Leon spoke, kissed him goodnight, made his favorite meals. But behind every polite nod, every gentle touch, my heart was counting down. Because I knew their little secret wasn't going to stay behind that TV much longer. I just had to wait for the right moment to open the curtain all the way. It took me 3 more days to find the courage to begin. 3 days of pretending, smiling, cooking meals I didn't taste. 3 nights of lying beside a man whose breathing had once been the rhythm of comfort and now only reminded me of deceit. But I needed those 3 days to think, to plan, and to make sure my next steps would leave no trace of weakness behind. Leon thought I was slipping back into routine. He'd hum around the house again, talk about the church picnic, the neighbors, the weather. He looked peaceful, and that peace, it disgusted me. Jasmine called once or twice during those days, her tone bright, as though she hadn't buried a knife between my ribs. "Hey, Mama Evelyn," she'd say, "Lily wants you to come by again soon." Her voice was so soft, so practiced, it made me want to scream. I told her gently, "Soon, dear. Maybe this weekend." And then I hung up before my voice cracked. That Friday morning, Leon left early. Said he was helping Marcus fix the fence. But I knew Marcus was at work. I'd spoken to him the night before, so I followed. It wasn't something I'd ever imagined doing. After 40 years of marriage, following your husband feels like lowering yourself into mud. But I did it anyway, because truth demands its price. I waited 10 minutes after he left, then took my car, staying far enough behind that he wouldn't see me. He turned down the road that led not to Marcus's neighborhood, but into the next town over, near the edge of a small park. My heart thudded in my throat. I knew where he was going before the car even stopped. He parked near Jasmine Street. I pulled over half a block away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Through the windshield, I saw him walk to her porch, knock twice. She opened the door, smiled, and then he kissed her right there in broad daylight. No hesitation. No guilt, just comfort, the kind that comes from repetition. It wasn't passion. It wasn't heat. It was familiarity, the kind that said, "We've done this before, we'll do it again." I sat there watching until they disappeared inside. The betrayal burned so deep I could taste metal on my tongue. But even then I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, "All right then, Leon. All right." I drove away, calm and deliberate. If I stayed longer, I might have done something I couldn't take back. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, his favorites. He walked in later than usual, humming, whistling, smiling. "Smells good," he said, kissing my cheek. "Mm-hmm," I murmured. "Busy day?" "Yeah, Marcus needed help patching up that old fence." My heart ached at how easily he lied. How effortlessly. I poured him a glass of tea, sat across from him, and smiled. "You always were handy, Leon." He grinned, stuffing his mouth with food, oblivious to the poison sitting quietly behind my smile. That weekend, I made sure to visit Marcus. I told Leon I'd be spending the afternoon with Lily, that I missed her laughter. When I got there, Jasmine was alone. Marcus had gone to pick up Lily from a birthday party. She greeted me warmly like always, "Mama Evelyn." "I didn't know you were coming by." "You should have called." "I wanted to surprise you," I said softly. She was wearing a simple white blouse and jeans. Nothing unusual, but there was something about her, a nervous energy flickering under the surface. "Can I get you some coffee?" she asked. "Sure." While she moved around the kitchen, I studied her. The way her hands trembled slightly when she reached for the sugar. The way she kept glancing toward the door, as if waiting for someone. When she handed me the mug, I took it, holding her gaze a moment too long. "You know, Jasmine, I always thought Marcus was lucky to have you." Her smile faltered. "That's sweet, Mama Evelyn." "You remind me a lot of myself when I was your age," I continued, stirring the coffee slowly. "Strong, patient, loyal? Thank you." Her voice wavered. I leaned forward slightly, my tone lowering. "Loyalty, though, it's a fragile thing. Once broken, it doesn't heal easy." For a second, she froze, her eyes flicking to mine, her breath catching just a bit. And then, right on cue, I heard it, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Leon's car, her face drained of color. "Is that Marcus?" she asked quickly, setting the cup down. I didn't answer. I just stared at her, my silence louder than any word could be. The front door opened. Footsteps, Leon's voice. "Jasmine?" He stepped into the kitchen, stopped dead when he saw me sitting there. "Evie." The room went so still I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I smiled. Soft, measured, calm. "Well, Leon, what a coincidence." He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Jasmine stood frozen, eyes darting between us. I took a slow sip of coffee. "You didn't tell me you two were meeting today," Leon stammered. Marcus asked me to drop off some—" "Save it," I said quietly, setting the cup down. "You've lied enough for one lifetime." For a long moment, none of us spoke. Jasmine's hands trembled, Leon's face went pale. Finally, I stood up. My voice was calm, almost tender. "I saw you both. The other day, behind the TV, you remember that, don't you?" Jasmine's lips parted. "Mama Evelyn, I didn't mean for—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "You meant every bit of it. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." Leon tried to step forward. "Evelyn, please, don't." My tone dropped, sharp enough to cut glass. "Not another word." He froze. I turned toward Jasmine, who was trembling now. "You're in my son's house, my granddaughter's home, and you think what you've done will stay buried?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I swear it just happened." "No," I said quietly. "It didn't just happen. You let it happen, again and again. And now, you're going to live with the truth." I picked up my purse and walked past Leon, brushing his shoulder lightly. "You'll see, both of you, soon enough. And with that, I left, leaving them standing there, trapped in their silence, while the sound of my heels on their kitchen floor was the only goodbye they'd ever get from me. I drove home with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair, the weight in my chest finally lifting. Not because I was free, but because I'd finally stopped pretending. The next step wouldn't be confrontation. It would be exposure, and I knew exactly how to make the truth impossible to hide. The house felt heavier that night, like it could sense what I was planning. I sat by the dining room table, my fingers tracing the edge of a photo frame, our wedding picture. Leon and I, 1979. I was in lace and hope. He was in a suit 2 sizes too big, but smiling like he'd won the world. I studied that photo for a long time, wondering how a man's smile could lie for decades without cracking. Then I set it face down. I took out the small notebook where I'd written everything I'd seen and heard these past few weeks. Dates, times, words. I wasn't a woman who believed in chaos. I believed in proof, and I was about to make sure everyone saw it. The next morning, I called Marcus. "Sweetheart," I said, keeping my tone light, "could you and Jasmine come over for dinner Sunday? It's been too long since we had a family meal here." He sounded happy. "Sure thing, Ma, I'll bring Lily too. She's been talking about your banana pudding all week. Then I'll make extra." When I hung up, I sat in the stillness of the kitchen, the plan fully formed in my head. I wasn't going to yell or break dishes or beg anyone to choose sides. No, my justice would be served quietly, in the same way they'd hurt me. Silently. Completely. Sunday came like any other. The house smelled of cinnamon and baked chicken. The table was set with my best china, the one I saved for holidays. Leon looked nervous all afternoon. I could tell by the way he kept checking his watch, pacing, pretending to fix things that didn't need fixing. He hadn't said a word about that day at Marcus's house, and neither had I. We'd lived in a strange silence since, the kind that made every sound in the house echo too loudly. When Marcus and his family arrived, I greeted them with open arms. I hugged my son, kissed Lily's forehead, and even smiled at Jasmine. Her eyes met mine briefly, guilt flashing like lightning. I pretended not to notice. Dinner began light, cheerful. Marcus told stories about work, Lily talked about her favorite teacher, and Leon laughed at all the right moments, though I could see the stiffness in his shoulders. Halfway through dessert, I stood up. "I've got something to show you all," I said softly. Leon's fork paused mid-air. "Evie, now's not—" "Sit down," I said gently. "You'll want to see this." I walked into the living room and picked up the small tablet I'd left on the shelf. When I returned, I placed it in front of Marcus. "Just a little something I came across," I said. He frowned, curious, and pressed play. The screen lit up with footage, grainy but clear. Leon and Jasmine, in that same living room, their faces close, whispering, laughing. Then the kiss. The air in the room changed instantly, heavy, suffocating. Marcus's face drained of color. Jasmine covered her mouth, whispering, "No, no," while Leon's hand shot up as if to stop the video. "Evelyn, where did you—" "Sit down," I said again. My voice was calm, steady. "You wanted to see the truth? There it is." Marcus stared at the screen, disbelief twisting into fury. "Dad, what the hell is this?" Leon opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His eyes darted toward me, pleading, broken. Jasmine sobbed quietly, trembling. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" He turned on her, voice shaking. "You didn't mean to? My own father, Jasmine? Marcus, don't touch me!" He shouted, standing so fast his chair fell backward. Lily, frightened by the noise, began to cry. I reached for her gently, pulling her into my arms, her small body shaking against me. "Go to your room, sweetheart," I whispered. "It's okay." When she was gone, the room fell silent again, only the sound of Jasmine's sobs filling the air. Leon finally found his voice. "Evelyn, please, I can explain." I turned to him slowly. "Explain what, Leon?" "That while I was baking for our granddaughter, you were busy teaching her mother how to betray her husband?" His mouth trembled. "It wasn't like that." Stop, I said softly, cutting him off. You've spent your whole life talking, Leon. Maybe it's time you sit and listen. Marcus's face was red, his hands clenched at his sides. I can't believe you. Either of you. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. Why didn't you tell me sooner, Ma? Because I wanted you to see it yourself, I said. Not from my mouth, from theirs. He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. You were right to wait. Jasmine stood up suddenly, her voice breaking. Marcus, please. He backed away from her. No, you and my father. Get out. Leon stepped forward. Son! Marcus's voice thundered. Get out! The words hung heavy in the air, final and brutal. Leon looked at me, that familiar helplessness in his eyes, the same one he wore when life didn't go his way. But this time, I didn't feel pity, I felt peace. He gathered his coat, eyes down, shoulders slumped. Jasmine followed, silent and pale. They both walked out of my house, into the cold night, with nothing but their shame to keep them warm. After they were gone, Marcus sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Ma, he whispered, I don't even know how to feel. I sat beside him, resting my hand over his. You feel whatever you need to, baby. Anger, hurt, it'll all come and go. But don't let it change the good in you. He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. I just don't understand how he could do this. Some men, I said quietly, confuse love with attention. They chase what they've lost inside themselves. He looked at me, eyes red. Are you okay? I smiled faintly. I will be. When they left that night, the house fell into silence again. The kind that used to feel lonely, but now it felt clean. Honest. I sat by the window watching the headlights fade down the street and whispered to myself, that's enough, because I hadn't ruined them. They had ruined themselves. All I did was show the light, but peace, I've learned, doesn't come right away. It lingers at the edge of pain, waiting for you to make room for it. And I knew the days ahead would test that peace, because secrets, once exposed, never stop echoing. Word travels fast in small towns, faster than forgiveness ever could. By Wednesday, I couldn't step into the grocery store without someone giving me that look, the kind people wear when they know your pain, but don't dare say it out loud. The quiet, heavy kind of pity that settles into silence instead of sympathy. Leon hadn't come home since that night. I knew he was staying at the old motel near the highway, the one with flickering neon lights and rooms that always smelled of stale air and regret. Jasmine. I hadn't heard a word from her, but I'd heard plenty about her. The whispers came through the wind, from church, from neighbors, even from my hairdresser, who tried her best to soften the edges of gossip. Poor Marcus, they said. Bless his heart. Such a shame. After all Evelyn did for that girl. And always in hushed tones, like sin should be whispered, even when the truth's already out in the open. I didn't care about the gossip. I'd lived long enough to know that people will talk no matter what you do. What mattered to me was what my son would do next. Marcus didn't call for 3 days. Then one evening, just as I was washing the dishes, my phone rang. Ma, he said quietly. Can I come over? Of course, baby. When he arrived, he looked exhausted. His eyes were hollow, his voice cracked around the edges. He sat down at the table and just stared at his hands for a long moment. I filed for separation, he said finally. She's moving out by the end of the week. I nodded slowly. That's your choice, son. You do what brings you peace. He shook his head, eyes glistening. Peace feels impossible right now. Lily keeps asking where her mama is. I don't know what to tell her. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Tell her the truth, but in small pieces. Children don't need the full weight of adult pain. Just honesty in doses their hearts can hold. He nodded, wiping his eyes. You always know what to say, Ma. I had to learn, I said softly. The hard way. Later that week, the pastor called. Evelyn, he said gently. Leon came by the church today. Oh? He wants to meet. Said he's lost. I let out a slow breath. He's been lost a long time, Pastor. He just didn't notice until now, he sighed. Maybe so. But he's asking for forgiveness. That word, forgiveness, sat heavy in the air between us. I'll think about it, I said finally, and I meant it. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I wasn't ready to hate either. That Sunday, I went to church alone for the first time in decades. The choir sang softly. The light through the stained glass painted the pews in colors that looked too gentle for such a heavy week. When the service ended, people came up, some hugging me, others avoiding my eyes, not sure what to say. But it didn't matter. I didn't need words. Halfway down the aisle, I saw him, Leon, standing near the back, suit wrinkled, eyes tired. For a moment, everything around us disappeared. Just two people, standing on the ashes of what used to be love. He took a small step forward. "Evie." I stopped him with a look. "Not here," I whispered. He nodded slowly, shame carving new lines into his face. "Can I come by later?" "Please," I didn't answer. I just walked past him, the sound of my heels echoing on the wooden floor. Not angry, not cold. Just done. That evening, as I sat on my porch, he came. No flowers, no gifts, just a man carrying the weight of what he'd done. "Can I sit?" he asked. I motioned to the chair across from me. He sat down, exhaling deeply. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I can't stand knowing what I've done to you." To Marcus, I said nothing. He continued, voice trembling. "I don't even know how it started. She reminded me of you when we were younger. Her laughter, the way she listened. I was stupid. I thought I was still that man you married. But I'm not. I'm just old and empty." I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't the same man I'd loved. The years had carved guilt into his bones. "Leon," I said quietly, "I loved you for 40 years. That love doesn't vanish overnight. But the trust? That's gone. And you can't build a house on ashes." He nodded slowly, tears brimming in his eyes. "I know. I just needed to say I'm sorry." I stood, my voice soft but firm. "Then say it to God, because I'm still learning how to listen." He nodded again, then rose, hesitated, and whispered, "You always were the strong one." As he walked down the steps, I watched him go, a man finally carrying his own cross instead of handing it to me. Days turned into weeks. Marcus moved through the motions of single fatherhood, strong but scarred. Jasmine left town quietly, wordlessly, like a ghost ashamed to haunt the place she'd poisoned. And me, I started to breathe again. I tended to my garden, went back to choir practice, took long walks in the evenings. Every sunset felt like a little piece of healing, slow and stubborn. One afternoon, Lily came to visit. She ran into my arms, giggling, smelling of crayons and fresh laundry. "Mama says she's sorry," she whispered into my neck. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I know, baby. Some mistakes take a long time to fix." She pulled back, frowning in that serious little way only children can. "Do you still love Grandpa?" The question caught in my throat. I smiled softly. "I love the man he used to be, and I pray for the man he's trying to become." She nodded, satisfied, and ran off to play in the yard. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace, because healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from standing in your truth long enough that the hurt starts to lose its teeth. And though the world knew what had happened, I refused to let it define me. The betrayal was theirs. The dignity, that was mine. Autumn came early that year. The air felt lighter, cleaner, like God himself had opened the windows just to let my house breathe again. The leaves on the oak tree in my yard turned the color of rusted gold. And every morning I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, watching them fall one by one. There was something comforting in it, watching things let go when their time was done. It had been 3 months since everything broke apart. And though I still woke up some mornings reaching for a presence that wasn't there anymore, I didn't ache the way I used to. Grief, I learned, doesn't disappear. It just changes shape. I filled my days with small, steady things. I started teaching Sunday school again. I baked pies for the neighbors. I even started a little book club with the ladies from church. We called ourselves the Unbroken Circle. It felt good to have purpose again. Marcus would stop by every weekend with Lily. She brought laughter back into my walls. That little girl had a way of seeing light in everything, even cracks. One afternoon she brought me a crayon drawing. "This is you, Grandma," she said proudly. I looked at the picture. It was a stick figure with a crown, standing in front of a big yellow sun. "Why do I have a crown, baby?" I asked, smiling. "Because you're brave," she said simply. "Sometimes, children understand things that grown folks complicate." A few weeks later, I saw Leon again. It was at Marcus's house, Lily's birthday. I hadn't expected him to come, but when he walked in with a small wrapped gift, I didn't feel anger. Just distance, like watching a chapter that no longer belonged to my story. He looked nervous, older, like the months had carved new lines into him. "Evelyn," he said quietly. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied, my tone calm but not unkind. He handed Lily her gift, a stuffed bear wearing a red bow, and for a moment his smile reached his eyes. But then his gaze shifted back to me, and I could see regret there, heavy and real. When the party ended, he waited till the others had gone inside. "I've been going to counseling," he said softly, "trying to understand why I did what I did." "That's good," I said, not looking away. "Understanding is the first step," he hesitated. "I'm not asking for us to go back. I know I don't deserve that, but I do hope someday you'll forgive me, even if I never see it happen." I took a deep breath. "The kind that feels like the closing of a long, painful book." "Leon," I said, "I forgave you weeks ago." His eyes widened slightly. "I didn't do it for you," I continued. "I did it for me, because carrying your sin was weighing me down, and I'm done carrying what doesn't belong to me anymore." He nodded, his jaw trembling. "You always had more grace than I deserved." "Maybe," I said softly, "but that's what grace is for." He nodded again, quietly, then turned to leave. And as he walked away, I didn't feel the bitterness that used to burn in my chest. Just peace, quiet and clean. That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders and a cup of tea in my hands. The moon hung low, silver and full, and the sound of crickets hummed like a soft hymn in the dark. I thought about everything: the betrayal, the heartbreak, the silence, and how somehow all of it had led me here, still standing, still whole, still me. I realized something that night, something I wish I'd known years ago. Love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes love means leaving with your dignity intact. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting either. It means remembering, without letting it control you anymore. The next Sunday, Pastor invited me to speak at the women's group. He said, "Evelyn, there's strength in your story. Maybe it'll help someone else find theirs." So I told them. Not every detail, but enough. Enough for them to see that even when life cracks open in the ugliest ways, there's beauty in surviving it. I told them how I'd learned that silence can be a weapon, and sometimes it can be grace. How revenge might satisfy the moment, but peace sustains the soul, and how no matter what people take from you, they can't touch your worth unless you hand it to them. When I finished, there was a stillness in the room, the kind that comes when hearts recognize truth. A few women wiped their eyes. One came up and hugged me. "You make me believe healing is possible," she whispered. I smiled. "It is. You just have to stop waiting for an apology to set you free." By winter, I'd redecorated the house. Fresh paint, new curtains, lighter colors. Not to erase the past, but to remind myself that I still had chapters left to live. I even started volunteering at the community center, teaching young mothers how to cook simple, hearty meals on small budgets. It felt good, pouring love into others again. One evening, after a long day, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from Jasmine. The handwriting was shaky, the paper slightly wrinkled. She wrote that she'd moved to another state, was getting help, and wanted to apologize. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted to thank me for not destroying her life when she destroyed mine. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote, "I still pray for Marcus and Lily every night. I hope someday you can pray for me too." I folded the letter slowly, held it against my chest, and whispered, "I already have." That night, I stood by the window and looked at the stars. The same stars that had watched me cry, rage, and finally heal. And I realized peace doesn't come when everything's fixed. It comes when you finally stop needing it to be. I was no longer the woman who had stood silent behind that half-open door. I was the woman who learned that silence could be sacred, and in that silence, I found myself again. You know, when I think back on that day, the door half open, the curtain trembling in my hand, I realize that was the moment my old life ended. But it was also the moment I began again. Pain has a strange way of purifying you. It burns away the illusions, the excuses, the fear. And when the smoke clears, you're left standing there, raw, honest, and reborn. I used to believe family was something you protected at all costs. But now I know the truth. Sometimes protecting yourself is protecting your family, especially the ones still learning from your strength. Forgiveness doesn't mean welcoming people back into your home. Sometimes it just means letting go so their choices don't live rent-free in your heart anymore. So tonight, if you're listening to my story with a heavy chest, maybe you've been betrayed, lied to, or made to feel small. I want you to remember this. You can lose everything people gave you and still keep everything God placed inside you. Dignity, grace, peace. They can't take that from you, because even when your world falls apart, you still have the power to decide who you become in the aftermath. Now tell me, my dear, if you were the one standing behind that door, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have walked away with your crown still shining?